I've made the Serum 2 patch that sounds a little bit like an 80s astronaut dying. It's kind of a pad, kind of not a pad. You'll see it's pretty versatile. That's why he's nervous. He's gonna die. Poor dude. Here's the patch used in kind of a garage beat. Here's how it would sound if Childish Gambino had used it.
I wanted you to know that I am ready to go. Heartbeat, no heartbeat. I wanted you to know whenever you are around. Can't speak, I can't speak.
Here's how it sounds as if it was like, I don't know, some sort of dirty dubstep bass thing. I don't know, just hear it. Maybe more of a laser. And finally, this is what happens when you play it so low that it doesn't even show up on this keyboard. It's a cool sound. It's a weird sound, but it's a cool sound. I'm going to show you how I made this patch, but more importantly, I'm going to show you why I made the decisions I made whilst creating it. Hopefully this will help you make your own interesting patches. So there's a lot to this sound. We've got all 3 oscillators being used. We have a filter, we've got 2 envelopes, and then we have a bunch of effects as well. So I'm gonna strip this all out and we're gonna reconstruct it step by step. All right, so I've turned off all of the oscillators except for oscillator A, and I wanna talk to you a little bit about how I've kind of constructed the basic timbre of the sound, and why I've chosen the wavetables that I chose. So I'm gonna be honest with you. First wavetable that I pick, it's just a random pick, baby. So I have clicked dull toy in this case. Why? I don't know. This is actually a Serum 1 wavetable, and I've realized recently that I've never been clicking these bloody things. So I keep saying season 2. Season 2 tables, Serum 2 tables are hidden in here. Why have you done that? Dude, why are you doing that, dude? We don't need any of these ones. I haven't picked any of these. I've just used the digital dull toy. Why have I done that? It's because it sounds cool. The reason that I picked that is it's got a really nice kind of wide frequency spectrum. Let's zoom in a little bit on this guy. As I was saying, a nice kind of wide frequency spectrum on it. I've added some unison because I want it to be nice and wide. But the thing I really liked about this is the different wavetable positions. It starts kind of full spectrum. Halfway through it gets sort of hollow. And then right at the top we get a little bit of shimmer. So as you work your way, as you work your way through that, let's get back up there, it kind of morphs through that sound. And they're all equally rich, but they all have just a slight different characteristic, which I think sounds very nice. Oscillator B is kind of a interesting choice. I've gone with the PWMDUS, and as we all know, that stands for Pulse Width Modulation DUS. And this is a shimmery sound. So what I've done is I've actually set it to FM from A because I want it to be really, really screechy. If I pull that all the way back down, you'll hear what this sounds like. Maybe if I disable that too. But as I said, I've FM'd this to the first one. So it gets really shimmery, kind of noisy. It's mostly noisy. But what's cool about this is it has a moment of no noise at all right at the start, and then throughout a ton of noise. So it's pretty interesting. Anyway, it gives me some top end, it gives me a bit of character, and it's a wide boy too. Oscillator C is one of the best wavetables in Serum entirely. And this guy is acid. So if I play this, it just sounds so cool. I'm FMing it to B, so as being fum to here to fum to here. But none of this is really happening yet because it's on 0 warp, but I do have some modulation in the next section that makes that go interesting. Let's turn these all back on. Okay, I lied. I'm just going to put 2 of them on because I want you to hear what this does to the sound. So without the acid and with, what that's doing is just adding a bunch more kind of body to the sound. I felt that it was a little thin without something extra. Like it sounds nice, but where's the oomph? You know, the oomph comes from and then there will be some modulation happening here in a bit, and this sounds like this. Really cool. So generally the goal of these oscillators is to give me the sort of clay with which I can then sculpt the sound afterwards. So I want really good source material so that I can then modify that with filters, LFOs, effects, everything like that. I'd actually intended for this to be a pad, but as you heard in the beginning, it kind of is quite versatile. The pad sound is coming from this envelope, so the overall attack, hold, decay, sustain, really, I don't know why I'm reading that. You know what that is. It's for the overall sound. So just a bit of a slow start and then a really, really long release is what's giving it that sort of pad-ish sound. Filtering on this thing is pretty simple. It's just a MG Low 12, a classic. And all we're doing here is reducing the cutoff a little bit and adding some resonance, because without it, if I add that all the way up, you'll hear it's a little bit shimmery. So as I bring the cutoff down, removing some of that kind of high noise sound, we'll probably add a bit of that back in a little bit with some LFOs, but just want to reduce some of the kind of grating sound that you get from it. And when you reduce the cutoff like that, you'll notice that it starts to sound a bit dull. It's bright and dull. And that's because this bottom area here is giving all the weight to the sound. To fix that, I added a bit of resonance. It reduces some of the weight down here, adds a little bit of a bump here, which just sounds quite nice when it comes to this cutoff area. I'm going to bring it down just a tiny bit more. But that gives you less of the body sound and a bit more of a balanced sound at the end of the day. So even just with that sound, it's quite pretty, isn't it? However, we need movement. So if there's anything that you take from this video, it is the importance of movement in synth design. So like you heard that, it sounds great, it sounds cool, but it kind of also sounds like basically any synth you've heard before. The secret to making interesting experimental sound design is in the modulation. So go heavy on the modulation and you'll make some interesting sounds, as we will show you right now. So starting with LFO 1, I have a very basic pyramid kind of thing happening here over 2 bars. Maybe it's the Illuminati, it's something like that. It's something very scary. Anyway, this pyramid thing is being used, it's in re-trigger, so every time I play, it restarts. And this is being used to modulate the wavetable position of our dull toy. As well as detuning our PUMDUS. That one's very, very subtle. I'll be honest, that's super, super subtle. It's just adding a little bit of movement that is almost imperceivable, but it's there. And when you take it away, I don't know, maybe you don't notice it. I don't know. It's cool though. It's cool. Then finally, we're adding some cutoff modulation. So like I mentioned, we are using this to kind of go up and down over time. So even just that has already added a bunch of character. But the actual interesting part, or the chaos, I guess, even though it's not really chaos, is LFO2. We're using LFO2 in free mode, which means that it will just continue running. It won't restart. It won't be an envelope. It will just continue running forever. So this is, again, 2 bars, and it's a big old ramp from nothing to the very top and then jumps straight back down to the very bottom. So I like to think about this as the journey of our nervous astronaut. So he starts from Earth, he's working his way up, and he gets all the way to Uranus. Once he reaches Uranus, once he gets right to the tip of Uranus, he drops straight back down to Earth, and it's chaos. He crashes, everyone's sad. He's a very nervous astronaut, you know. He was scared about the journey that he was going to take, but here he is, crashed back down to Earth. So we're using this LFO in 4 different locations, 3 of which are on this screen, and the 4th is a secret that will be revealed in probably the next 30 seconds. We're using it on the wavetable position of this PUMDUS. The FM position of this PUMDUS. I think that sounds so cool. The reason that I'm doing this is I wanted to experiment with what the free thing would do. And I just think it sounds so cool to kind of just keep glitching back out of nowhere. And it's inappropriate too. During the musical moments, it happens at times that maybe I don't actually want it to happen, but the chaos of that makes it interesting. And we have it on the warp for the acid. And then one final super secret section next. Surprise, it is the reverb, because it already showed you that it was on the reverb, so I had to keep it a big secret. But anyway, let's get into the effects and then we'll come back to the LFO on the reverb in just a moment. All right, so here are our effects. We have a reverb, an equalizer, and a compressor. So I'm just going to run through each one, one after the other. So our reverb starts out actually at 0% wet. It's a vintage reverb. So what I'm using the LFO for here is to just modulate that. So this sounds so crazy because it makes the sound kind of move into a space and then immediately out of a space and then into a space and then immediately out of the space. You'll hear it. It's really glitchy sounding. And again, it sounds kind of wrong, but pretty interesting. The equalizer is something that I never do, and actually I don't know that I've ever done it before, and that is to increase down in the low end. So I'm going to bypass it for now and just let you hear what this sounds like. I think it sounds really good, but what was missing for me was some sort of acoustic element. Like, it sounded too synthetic, and obviously it's synthetic, but I wanted it to sound more realistic. And typically when I have recorded realistic stuff, it's muddy, it's muddier, right? So I've added this EQ at 100 hertz or something. It was 99, now it's 100. And just kind of bumped it up a little bit, and you'll hear what this does. It adds more body and more warmth to the sound. It makes it sound more realistic. And maybe in a mix, you're going to have to cut that out, but who cares? We're trying to make something that sounds cool on its own. And in the effects, finally, I've added a compressor. This is just a basic compressor, pretty low ratio, but, and again, I don't know. If you know me, I don't care about any of this. Who cares? All I care about is how big this bar gets. And that's chunky. So to wrap up these effects, the reverb is to give it a place and to give it some glitching to make it go in and out and in and out. The equalizer is to give it some more kind of realistic sounds, some body, some mud, in fact, but to make it sound like a real sound. And the compressor is because I like how the bar looks when it goes up and down. Yeah, that's pretty much why I did that. Cool, that's all there is to it. It's a really interesting sound, but the key thing that I want you to note is that it doesn't really matter what oscillators you choose. It does somewhat, but the thing that makes a sound interesting or unique is how you modulate it. Mess around with modulation. Modulation is the most fun thing about synth design. Mess around with it. I'm not very good at editing yet, so can you just imagine that when I play this sound, I kind of like disappear into the distance, like Thanos snaps me, something like that. That would be a good exit for the video.